We're going to be talking a little bit about the study that we did as Capacitar on the impacts and learnings of the work we do around the world, and we have a short PowerPoint to go with it. So I've asked Patty, who was part of Trócaire that funded it, and she was instrumental in helping us design it and do it.
You want me to do the lights?
What do you think on the lights, Pat?
I would lower some of these.
Okay, yeah, some of these. Let's go over it. Good, yes. Now I can just hit the up and down. And I just want you to jump in and, yeah.
I wanted to say, just regarding the study that was done, it was really Patty who really pushed us, Joan and me. We kept writing these funding proposals, and Patty would very politely send back the proposal, and she'd say to us, think bigger.
Yeah.
And then we'd get Joan and I would meet and we'd get another version, and then we'd get it back from Patty, you're not thinking big enough. And I just want to acknowledge Patty. Patty made us and empowered us to think systemically. Actually asking that remarkable question of what are you doing to not just impact individuals, but organizations and whole systems. And because of that, that's the main question we ask now when new teams are developing. And I know our newest team in Japan, they're really looking at that question. So thank you, Pat.
Maybe just to put a bit of context into that kind of initiative. Trócaire had been supporting Capacitar on a number of countries. In Rwanda, in Burundi, in Congo, in Sierra Leone, East Timor. So there were a number of countries where Capacitar had that funding. Sri Lanka after the tsunami. So the idea from the governance and human rights team where I was at that time. Oh, sorry. The idea, I mean, I was part of a team, and as part of a team we had this idea of maybe support Capacitar, but not necessarily on a country-specific program or set of trainings. So the idea was more to look beyond of what Capacitar had achieved. And this is where the development jargon and all this new fashion of looking at results and impact came in. But we thought that this could be an exploration, not only to say how many trainings have been done, not only how many people Capacitar have reached, but looking at the quality of the work and see what, how Capacitar had influenced the practice of others at individual level and at community or collective level.
So we called this the Research and Reflection Project, and the goals were to develop an effective process to get data out of what we do, to identify the learnings and make changes to achieve a greater impact with the work that we do, to document and disseminate learnings, to interchange with larger organizations and systems to impact policy and structures, and to develop our core leadership. And you see our core team up there in the organization. So I was the project coordinator on this, and so I had the fortunate and humbling and wonderful experience of doing this study and visiting various countries: Rwanda, East Timor, Argentina, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and videotaping interviews in 12 countries, collecting questionnaires and evaluations from 18 countries, so that we could begin, as Patty said, to look at the larger impact of the work and what learnings we could do from that. So we used interviews, we used focus groups, we used questionnaires. We went back and looked at some of the evaluations from some of the trainings that we had done, and then we developed some case studies, and to document the spillover effect of Capacitar or the multiplication effect. We did mapping analysis.
Can I jump in?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you for the acknowledgement, Pat, but I have to say that the Capacitar team were impeccable. The precision, the methodology, they really took this as a very, very serious assignment. And you're going to see later from this slide onwards how that happened and the richness of all the different comments that came from that combination of different research methodologies that you picked for this piece of work.
Thank you. One of the things we did ask people to do was to choose either a phrase or a adjective to describe themselves before they took Capacitar training and then after, as to what kind of change came in their lives. And these are just a few of the things that people said. And you can read those. I don't need to read those for you. But the whole idea that there's change and then there's transformation. And change is the beginning of transformation. And so these were things that people said that had begun to happen in their own lives using the Capacitar practices. We also asked people to do symbols of personal transformation. And this is one from Rwanda, from a trauma survivor. And you see on the left-hand side how this person saw themselves before the Capacitar training, and then how they saw themselves today or after the training. So the burden isn't necessarily gone, but the ability to live and live well with that burden comes through the use of Capacitar practices. And another symbol of personal transformation, and this is from the detention center where Kathy Brown and Richard work in Texas, and a detainee, and before and after Capacitar 6-week workshop. You can see on the left and in the middle, seeing herself as a negative soul, and then doing her Tai Chi on the right, and how this changed her view of herself and her situation. Yeah, it's wonderful. And then we began to look also at organizations, so interviewing with focus groups, interviewing people within organizations, staff, and we found that in organizations, Capacitar was integrated into the culture, and it was used at staff and program levels. So, and what came out of this was improved relationships among staff, less competition, more collaboration, more support for each other in both day-to-day and when there was crises in their lives, they felt they could turn to each other for support. Better relationships with clients, and this was really important. One of the things that I remember was saying, yes, more welcoming and accepting, but also less judgmental, and that was the word that they used, that lots of times in working with clients, when they came in with whatever they were, they would be judging how they saw them. And this way they were able to open themselves, not be judgmental, and be more welcoming and accepting. And then, of course, the adaptation of the practices with many different programs. And this group here, we have many, many examples of the different programs that this is being used in now. So one of them being George and Rita in the Office of Restorative Justice in Los Angeles. Then looking at systems, and this is the real challenge, and this is the challenge that Patty put forth to us too, and something that still presents challenges to us, a way to look at it. But it's critical in our world that the larger systems, instead of being traumatizing, begin to embrace new ways to work with people, okay? So that maybe we want, instead of using empowerment, we want to say co-power, respect, justice, and peace. So there are ways that can be done. You can identify from the top and try to work with key leaders at the top so it begins to move. or you can work with people from the bottom and have it move up through the organization. But I think the most important thing we learned that it's the result of individual action, okay? We are the heart, we are the hands, okay? We are the voice. So it's each of us and an individual in whatever organizations we work in, whatever systems we work in, that begin to make change in those systems. So some of the examples are in Northern Ireland, the Southern Health and Social Service Trust, okay? They work, as I remember, with seniors, with children, with a whole group, and work this into their programs that they deliver to these groups. The same with the Southern Western Educational Library Boards, so into schools, again, with young people. ANCOSAN, which integrates it into several programs and has a special program for grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. The diocesan peace programs in southern Sudan that Genevieve works with. Panama, gender violence and refugee. And in El Salvador, in one municipality where working through the Association for the Defense of Women have worked in domestic violence and rape, actually have a place in the police department that has music and a place to be where women can go, and the person who does that is a Capacitar trainer and shares some of the practices with them. And I can talk more about that because that's something someplace I work and know very personally from that. So also, in this particular case in Honduras, we saw both personal change and transformation, which led to systemic change and transformation at the national level. So, Gladys Lanza, who said when she came to Capacitar, she was one of the most angry, well, she was a very angry person. She was a union leader, her union had been destroyed, and she was very, very angry. And when she came to Pat's training, it was a transformation that she was able to see herself in a whole different way. And that if she continued to be angry, she wasn't going to really accomplish anything herself. So it opened her to life. And she could choose the road to darkness, or she could choose the road to light, and she chose the road to light. And so she works with an organization called Centro Visitación Padilla, and they train women to work with domestic violence victims. They counsel women in communities. They accompany women to the court for the judicial process. And some of the outcomes there for the counselors themselves was they improved their own self-confidence, less submissive, less fearful, and for their clients. And helping clients control themselves during the judicial process where they had to face the person that they were accusing of domestic violence, usually a partner or a husband. And they developed the manual for self-care, and that manual contains the majority of Capacitar practices in it. Oh, I do want to say one more thing about that, is when we talk about systemic change, that Visitación Padilla was able to work at the national level where they were able to change the mandatory service law for young men to go into the military and the domestic violence laws. And so all that came out of a training by Pat where Gladys found her way out of her anger and took that into her organization, and the organization, being very politically active, took it to the national level, working through the legislature. We also looked at the spillover effect, and this is just a map. This was in Rwanda, and it was 27 participants in 17 organizations who made it was about 18 months, made over 8,000 contacts where Capacitar was shared in some form. And I did just write this down because 1,600 of those contacts were deep enough, I can read it up there now actually, that it was used in the organization, and it was used in the service programs of the organization, and multiply out from there. So there you see that very important spillover effect that some of us were talking about tonight at dinner, at how you use it, you share it with somebody else within an organization, and then those people share it and we multiply it or spill it out. Really, really important.
So this is a net map?
Yes, this is what we call a net map, and what is it shows is in the middle, it shows the Capacitar, the 27 participants, and then as they move out and what kind of contacts they made, okay? So it moved out, and you can see the lines. If we'd known we were going to use this so much, we would have done a much better printing of
On the
it.
top, it also shows the populations,
Right.
some of them that they got into.
And these were the populations they worked with, so youth groups, prisoners, prostitutes, schools, Ministry of Health, et cetera, et cetera.
Out of curiosity, each circle, what does each circle represent?
It represented an actual group that they worked with. So each circle there would represent probably 15 to
Let me use the
50.
mic.
Yeah.
Each circle would represent anywhere from 15 to 50 people or more in, again, 17 these are the people from 17 organizations. So it was really hundreds of organizations, and
Do you mean by circle dot?
each dot. That's
Each
right.
dot.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
And
and the circle.
There's one concentric circles, is there meaning to that?
Okay, let's just do this again. So if you look at the very central dots right here, these are the 27 participants from 17 organizations in 4 provinces. And each of them, you'll see, stretches out, some of them to a number of different groups. Each of those represented another whole numbers and populations, which added up to 8,302 contacts. We also have, depending upon color, levels, but rather than going into the sophistication of that, we have 3 levels that Joan mentioned, including 1,619 people who not only just taught the practices, but they literally embedded it into their organizations.
And into their service programs.
So it's quite impressive.
It's
We
very
were
impressive.
astounded by these numbers. And this was one group in Rwanda. Imagine all of you doing this for all the people that you have touched. I'm thinking of Genevieve, who had children, like 800 children, in one school in South Sudan, I guess that was.
Northern Uganda.
Northern Uganda. And then the same way with the numbers in Japan that we worked with. I think all told there were over 350 people that we worked with just in our 9-day visit. So this is where we begin to look at how you're impacting people. It's quite impressive. What the El Paso Juarez team is doing is amazing. And all the jails and detention centers and just the fast spillover effect.
And this is just,
Joan, sorry,
Yeah.
can I jump in before we move on?
yes,
One of the things that called our attention when we looked at the report was how to ensure that Capacitar, as an organization or as a network, would own this information and would have it done on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, this was a very good exercise to have an idea, but there's so many countries that weren't included in the piece of research. So, I suppose this is one of the challenges that maybe in terms of looking forward, or where we would like to see Capacitar going in the future, it's maybe to be able to map out where exactly we are, what exactly we are doing. I know that probably it's a bit cumbersome and a bit difficult, but maybe it can be done in a more or less simple way, so that we won't have to wait until somebody gives the money and that the raw work will be done in terms of providing the information.
Yeah, I've done a little bit with the Salvador team of going back and all the years they've worked
where they've worked and how many people they've worked with. It's impressive, but also very complicated.
There are several doctoral students too who have done dissertations on Capacitar. Some of you know Shaw Johnson from the last 2008 conference, but she completed her doctorate studying the impact of Capacitar on the teachers in Cape Town, in really poor township schools there. And she's now doing postdoctoral work and is part of the University of Stellenbosch. And they're funding her to do ongoing research just in this very area. And it's on teacher burnout. Everybody's burnt out in the teaching world right now. But it's on teacher burnout in some of the poorest townships of South Africa. And the same way, the German woman, Regina Hess, who was with us last time, she did the study at the Mexican border of Capacitar there. So I think we need to get this, thanks Patty for suggesting that, but continuing on.
This is looking at some development projects in Capacitar, Rwanda, showing how many people have, how many organizations have retreated, and how many organizations are using the methods as part of their program. So of 125 organizations, 31 are using it as integrating it into their programs. And this is just a short list of examples. So part of this study was to look at the challenges and recommendations for the future. Okay? Recognizing, those of you who shared Capacitar have probably had this experience also, that people are very burned out. They come to a training, they feel really good after the training, but then they leave and real life takes over. So the trick has always been, how do we get individuals to make the commitment to their own self-care? And I think that's an ongoing challenge for them, how to motivate them to build these practices in their daily life and understand the benefit from them. I think the other thing is sometimes when something really stressful happens for people, somehow it goes out of their head that they have these tools that they can use. And so reminding people when they're going through something that yes, you have the finger holds, yes, you have tapping, yes, you have acupressure point, yes, you have Tai Chi, you have the holds to help you deal with whatever stressful situation you have at that moment in your life. With systems and institutions looking at education system, we're still need to work on a strategy and have the resources to do a study to measure the benefits for teachers and students in school, which they can present to the larger actors in the educational system. Those of you who would have a chance to look around, I brought the poster about the pilot project that was done in a school in El Salvador, in Suchitoto, El Salvador, with 50 students, 25 from 1st to 3rd grade, 25 from 4th to 6th, and they had gone through and they had identified particular students that they wanted. What finally happened was the teachers sent them the worst students that they had, okay? But they went through this program and they had a program for teachers and a program for parents at the same time. And the results were very positive in school attendance, less violence, parents saying that the kids were better behaved with their siblings at home, teachers saying that they were less stressed. They began to recognize some of the problems that their students faced. The whole thing is then there was no funding to continue it. The education system had no funding, and the pilot project support didn't support it over here. So it's how to get this in so it's funded in the educational system. It becomes part of the educational system. That is definitely an ongoing challenge. In health, identifying the larger actors, work with partners to develop a country-specific strategy to leverage the outcomes of study in larger health systems. Again, Pat, do you have any comments on that? No. Okay, you're good. Okay. So this is a challenge that we continue to face, is how to do this. Working also in mental health. Sharon, yes. You're integrating some of this into some of the work that you're doing?
Gosh, thanks. Just, here in the U.S., I've tried sharing Capacitar at quite a few different conferences, but last year we had a retreat for a very popular approach called Wellness Recovery Action Plan in Pennsylvania, where they invited me to do a workshop within the 3-day retreat, and then from that, the Capacitar materials made their way into the certification for peer specialists for their continuing education. That's good. That's going to be published this year as part of a curriculum that is used in every state of the country that is called Recovery to Practice. And they directly reference the website and use materials from the emergency toolkit.
Thank you. And then in development, the strategy to leverage the findings to reach actors in larger agencies, to educate them on trauma and its effects on development, and as a method to heal from trauma and improve development outcomes. Patty's done quite a bit of work in development using Capacitar practices. Yes, yeah.
Yes, and maybe there, I think one of the issues that for me was so important was that trauma is completely overlooked. We look for impact, we talk about results, we talk about effects, but we don't realize who we are working with. The people who are part of our partners' organizations, the organizations that Trócaire work for in different countries or works for in different countries, are traumatized people. 100% of the countries where Trócaire works are countries where there is some level of conflict, political tension, or whatever. So that was for me one of the kind of trigger points, I suppose, to look at this and try to I definitely think that the Capacitar approach, the program as such, the tools and what it offers, it allows to kind of recognize that.
And that has been part of the work that we started in Haiti, is working with some of the development organizations there, and then bringing their people in to begin to deal with the trauma that they've suffered, of course, the trauma of the earthquake, but the long-standing trauma of real poverty and ongoing violence and so forth.
My favorite quote was from, some of you met Balthazar at our 2008 conference, and he said, how can we in development, and they were doing all kinds of water projects, grassroots garden projects in Rwanda, how can we, if we're traumatized, run healthy development agencies?
In Timor, in East Timor, Joan, you are a witness. I remember a conversation with our office there, and they were saying, we don't know why people don't really react. They're very passive. We don't know if it's a cultural shock. We don't know if it's, the cultural differences between the teams that are coming from the outside and the locals. We don't know if it's just the way they are, or if it could be because of their trauma, and that really creates that apathy, apparent apathy, and kind of passivity. What I noticed was that when people are listened, and when you give them the time, because there are language barriers as well, and when you create an ambience of trust, people start to unfold and start to participate more and start to engage. But if you arrive with just a full agenda that really fills the space and doesn't allow that dialogue, I don't think you can do anything with it.
And one of the things I remember from East Timor is one of the first women that we worked with there was Maria Diaz. And she was one of the people that recognized how important trauma was in that society, and how important the transgenerational trauma, that it was being handed down from parent to child, and that if they didn't stop it, they were never going to develop, they were never going to move beyond where they were. This is East Timor? Yeah.
Maybe in terms of good news, before I left Trócaire a couple of months ago, there was one comment from the head of the program. She was just coming, that was last July, just June, she was just coming back from a field trip in Cambodia, and she stood up and said, well, I've realized, I've seen finally what you've been talking about for years, that trauma is a big issue in development, especially working in gender work. So I suppose there's hope.
Yeah.
That
We have to believe what we're talking today. We have to believe there's hope. We do believe there's hope. So, again, thank you to Trócaire, and especially thank you to Kathy from here, the government. She was part of the governance and human rights team for supporting this project. Now, one of the things that came out of this project was this book, okay, of findings, of case studies, and you've just had this translated into Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's called Capacitar Healing Trauma Empowering Wellness. And so I'm going to put this down in the center. If any of you haven't seen it, you're welcome to look at it and see.
Copies are for sale, see Rain, and you can buy a copy.
Okay.
There's limited knowledge.
Can I just say something
Yeah.
down there? I think to have the report, I think it's a great thing. It's a great tool for disseminating the word, for showing what Capacitar has achieved, for showing how Capacitar works, and to open up to other actors or other agents that would be interested in listening. And since the report was published, I've been talking to different people in Ireland, especially in universities. And I was very impressed, you know, when sometimes you talk to people who are very technical in development and who have been really doing the head work. And when you talk about this, you can have like sometimes a reaction that is not, you know, the faces that say what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But I've had the other reactions as well, saying how interesting that an agency like Trócaire is looking at these issues, because this is completely different, completely different to other things that are part of the development agenda. So there are universities that are looking at the issue of trauma and developing that into development programs, incorporating that into development programs, into occupational therapy programs, business, schools. So just maybe, I mean, I know that I'm always an optimist, but I was very impressed by that opening and that possibility to speak about that. Students in the geography kind of faculties that are looking at maybe the possibilities of learning, linking with arts. And I was invited to do a presentation not so long ago, and they were thrilled. And it was a group that per se was conflictive. There was not a sound in the room. The lecturers were impressed by their students themselves, because and we did a bit of Tai Chi. So, I mean, the way I've been doing it is present the findings and all that, but do a taster sessions. So it's like the theory and the practice, and it seems to be
Theory and practice.
To get an e-copy of the research report, just go onto our website, and under Program and Research, there's a section there. You can download the e-copy in English, and we want to upload the e-copy in Spanish that Patty just got translated for us.
But I think I want to, again, what Patty just said, to reemphasize that, because theory is one thing, but until people begin to feel that change in their body by doing the practices, that's what makes real believers of them. That's what breaks us into new systems, is when people change, and they see change in themselves, and they feel better.
And maybe just a final note. I mean, this was done in 2010.
2010.
So I was just thinking myself, I mean, now that I'm on my way to the south, kind of to share this with organizations and test waters in terms of how much interest there will be. But I thought, I mean, a piece of work that was done 3 years ago start to become old.
Yes.
So maybe, I mean, I know that it might sound very pushy.
Yes, maybe we should be doing it again.
But maybe to start thinking of how to update it.
Yes.
Or how maybe to maybe not a full kind of report, but maybe some case studies that would refresh the piece of research without necessarily having to spend a lot of